I was still holding the pie when my father told me not to come home again. It was warm pecan, her favorite. I had baked it the night before, following Grandma's old recipe. The one with crushed vanilla wafers pressed into the crust and just a splash of bourbon. She always said that was the secret. Not enough to taste, just enough to remember. I had driven 5 hours straight from Kansas City, barely sleeping, because Thanksgiving meant this. It meant tradition. It meant belonging. It meant her smile when she saw me walk through the door. It was Thanksgiving. I was home. Or at least I thought I was. We hadn't even said grace yet. The turkey was still whole. The cornbread steamed quietly in that ceramic dish, shaped like a leaf. I was still standing in the doorway, still smiling, still holding that pie, when Dad said it. "Give back the $50,000, Marissa." I blinked. Then he added, without raising his voice, "Or don't bother coming home again." For a moment, my mind refused to move. I waited for laughter, for someone to break the tension, for Dad to admit this was some badly timed joke. Thanksgiving was never our battlefield. But no one laughed. Dean stared into his water glass. Aunt Sylvia's jaw was locked tight. And my mother, my gentle, quiet mother, wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't sit. I couldn't. The pie tin felt heavier by the second. I looked down at it like it might explain what was happening. "Excuse me," I said. Dad's expression didn't change. "Let's not drag this out. You know what this is about." My chest tightened. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" Aunt Sylvia finally spoke. "It's about your grandmother's account. $50,000 disappeared last month." Dean cleared his throat. "Right after you helped her set up online banking." The words landed hard. It was true, I had helped Grandma. She hated technology, hated passwords even more. I'd walked her through the app one afternoon and wrote everything down in a floral notebook she kept next to the toaster. That was 5 weeks ago. And now they were saying that moment made me a thief. "Do you think I stole from her?" I whispered. No one answered. "The bank confirmed it," Dean said. "The withdrawals were online. No one else had access." I turned to Grandma. She didn't defend me. She didn't accuse me. She pressed her napkin to her lips like she might be sick. That's when it sank in. The drive. The pie. The years of showing up. None of it mattered anymore. Tonight, I wasn't family. I was evidence. I placed the pie gently on the granite counter. The tin made a soft sound, small but final. I reached for my coat. "You have until Sunday," Dad said behind me. "Then we talk to a lawyer." I didn't cry in the car. I just drove. Fairview was peaceful. Porch lights glowed. Paper turkeys decorated windows. The town smelled like nutmeg and stuffing and calm. Everyone was safe. Everyone except me. I pulled into the Weatherford Inn on Route 17. The clerk handed me a key and wished me a peaceful night. The room smelled like old carpet and microwave butter. I sat on the bed, boots still on, hands shaking. My name is Marissa Ellery. I'm 34 years old. I lead forensic audits for major firms. I trace fraud for a living. I catch people who think they're smarter than the system. And my family thought I stole from my grandmother. The worst part wasn't the accusation. The worst part was how easily they believed it. There had been signs. The way Lisa rolled her eyes when Grandma mentioned my promotion. Dad's backhanded jokes about me, never living a real life. Even last Christmas, when I offered to pay for roof repairs, David muttered something about buying loyalty. I stared at the ceiling and replayed every moment I helped Grandma with her banking. The notebook wasn't locked. The drawer wasn't locked. Lisa still lived there. David had a key. Anyone could have accessed it. Anyone. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. "We didn't want it to come to this, but you made it hard to trust you. No concern. No doubt. Just blame." I turned the phone face down. At work, I dismantle lies disguised as paperwork. I know how fraud hides. I know how easily blame can be redirected. And someone had made me the perfect fall person. I stared at the ceiling until the motel lights blurred. If they were going to treat me like a criminal, then it was time I thought like one. I woke before dawn. Money doesn't disappear. It moves. I poured myself a bitter cup of lobby coffee and opened my laptop. Our firm had been quietly tracking elder fraud cases. The same bank kept appearing. Greenwell Mutual. Grandma's bank. I messaged Theo from compliance. Just a name, a date range, a branch. An hour later, he sent a folder. 3 withdrawals. 20,000. 15,000. 15,000. All in person. Not online. That was the first crack. I opened the security footage. The first video loaded. A woman approached the counter, nervous, hoodie pulled low. She lowered her mask to speak. I froze. Lisa. Second video. David, calm, smiling, signing like it was routine. Third video. Lisa again, more confident this time. They hadn't just taken the money. They framed me. They waited until I set up the online account, used my digital footprint as camouflage. Family wasn't the shield. It was the weapon. I closed the laptop slowly. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was fraud. I packed my bag and pulled out a slim black folder, the kind I used in courtrooms. If they wanted a villain, fine. I'd bring receipts. I drove back to Fairview Monday afternoon. The driveway was full. Everyone was home. I walked in without knocking. They looked up. I placed the folder on the counter. You believed I stole from Grandma, I said calmly. Let me show you what really happened. The room went silent. I laid out the photos. The dates. The signatures. Not online. Not me. Lisa's mug trembled in her hand. Grandma reached for the papers, her hands shaking. You let me believe she stole from me, Grandma whispered. No one answered. Dad finally asked, what are you going to do? I met his eyes. I already sent the file to the family lawyer, I said. What happens next is your choice. I closed the folder. You told me not to come back unless I returned the money, I said quietly. I didn't take the money, I brought the truth. I left. No one followed. Back in Boston, life moved on. I stopped calling. Stopped explaining. Stopped waiting. 2 weeks later, Grandma called. We were wrong, she said. I'm sorry. I didn't rush back. Some doors once closed are meant to stay that way. I still keep the folder. I don't need to open it. The truth doesn't change. And neither do I. Winter came quietly after that. No dramatic snowfall. No cinematic apology tour. Just cold mornings, sharper air, and the kind of silence that settles when something breaks and no one knows how to fix it. I went back to work like nothing had happened. Same elevator rides. Same glass conference rooms. Same questions about case progress and deadlines. I answered them all with the same calm precision I always had. On the surface, nothing about me had changed. But I stopped calling on Sundays. The family group chat kept buzzing for a while. Photos of leftovers, a meme from Dean, a passive-aggressive hope everyone's okay from Mom. I muted it, let it talk to itself. 3 days later, I finally listened to Grandma's voicemail. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Marissa, we were wrong. I didn't want to believe it. I should have asked you. I'm so sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know. She hung up before the minute mark. I sat at my kitchen table long after the call ended, staring at the condensation ring from my coffee mug. Apologies are strange things. They don't undo anything. They just arrive late, hoping you'll still be standing where they left you. 2 weeks after that, a letter came in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Me, Lisa, and David on the back porch, Halloween costumes, fake smiles, plastic pumpkins at our feet. On the back, one sentence written carefully. "We didn't know how much we'd miss you until you were gone." No signature. David never reached out. Lisa didn't either. A cousin told me they'd moved out. Grandma had asked them to leave, said she needed space, said trust doesn't come back just because someone says sorry. I didn't ask for details. I didn't offer to come home. Instead, I built something new. On Saturdays, I started teaching a seminar at the community college. Financial protection for older adults. How scams work. How trust gets exploited. How paper trails save lives. It wasn't glamorous. No corner office. No bonuses. But it mattered. One afternoon after class, an older woman stopped me. She held my hand with both of hers and said, "I wish I had a daughter like you." I smiled. Didn't tell her I used to be one. December came and went. No tree, no ornaments, no obligatory family photos pretending everything was fine. There's a grief people don't talk about, not for death, but for the moment you realize the people you love chose a version of you that was easier to blame. And once they choose that version, they can't unsee it. I kept the black folder in a drawer beneath old tax returns and my mortgage papers. I never opened it. I didn't need to. The facts were settled. Or so I thought. In January, Theo called. "You might want to sit down," he said. Greenwell Mutual was under federal review. Multiple elder fraud cases, patterned withdrawals, teller complicity, and one name kept resurfacing in the internal emails. David's. He hadn't just stolen from Grandma. He'd been consulting for the bank. That's when I understood. This wasn't just family betrayal. This was organized, calculated fraud. And suddenly, my part in this story wasn't finished. Not even close. Theo didn't have to explain what that meant. I already knew the shape of it. David wasn't just a desperate son-in-law stealing from an old woman's account. He was a consultant with access, leverage, and knowledge of how internal controls failed when people trusted familiar faces. The withdrawals weren't sloppy. They were structured, just under reporting thresholds, spread across dates that wouldn't trigger automatic alerts. This wasn't panic. This was design. "Is my name anywhere in it?" I asked. Theo paused. It was at first, then we pulled the teller footage. I closed my eyes. So even now, even after the truth had been laid bare in my family's kitchen, the system had still been willing to believe I was the criminal. That part hurt more than I expected. "We're escalating," Theo continued. "Federal examiners, subpoenas, and Marissa, they're asking if you'll cooperate." I laughed once softly. I already did. "No," he said, "formally as a witness and possibly as an expert." When I hung up, I didn't pace. I didn't panic. I opened the drawer and pulled out the black folder. The one thing about betrayal is that it teaches you clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a quiet government building with beige walls and chairs that were never meant to be comfortable. A recorder blinked red on the table between us. "State your name for the record," the investigator said. "Marissa Ellery." "And your relationship to the account holder." "My grandmother." "And the individuals suspected of unauthorized withdrawals." "My sister-in-law and her husband." I didn't soften it. I didn't dress it up. I laid it out clean. Dates, access points, IP addresses, teller logs, signature comparisons. The digital footprint Lisa thought she'd buried under my help session. The consulting overlap David never disclosed. When I finished, the investigator leaned back slowly. "They framed you," he said. "Yes," I replied, "and they counted on the fact that family silence would do the rest." A month later, Greenwell Mutual's name hit the local news, then the regional press, then national, elder fraud, internal corruption, consultants abusing trust. David's consulting contract was terminated. Lisa was named as a cooperating party. The tellers were suspended. Grandma called once, voice shaking. I didn't know it was this big. It always is, I said gently. That's why people get away with it. Will they go to jail? That's not up to me. What I didn't say was that justice doesn't always look like bars and handcuffs. Sometimes it looks like losing access, losing credibility, losing the rooms you used to walk into without consequence. By spring, subpoenas had turned into charges. David tried to call. I didn't answer. Lisa sent an email, long, defensive, half apology, half justification, about pressure, about feeling invisible, about how she never meant for it to go this far. I archived it. You don't explain yourself out of fraud. You don't heal trust by narrating your intentions. The court asked me to testify. I wore a navy suit, no jewelry, no expression. I answered questions like I always did, calm, measured, exact. When David's attorney tried to imply I had motive, I smiled. Are you suggesting, I asked evenly, that I framed myself by uncovering a federal crime? The courtroom went quiet. Afterward, a junior prosecutor shook my hand. You were devastating. I nodded. I was honest. Summer arrived. The case settled quietly for the bank, loudly for the people involved. Consulting bans, financial restitution, a permanent mark that doesn't show up on a resume but follows you anyway. Grandma moved into a smaller place near my work. We had coffee on Sundays, not the old tradition, a new one. One afternoon, she touched my hand and said, "You didn't just clear your name, you protected people." I thought about that as I walked home, about how easily a family can exile you, and how power shifts the moment you stop begging to be believed and start proving. The folder went back into the drawer, not as evidence, as closure. And for the first time since Thanksgiving night, I slept without replaying the doorway, the pie, the words that pushed me out. Because the truth had done what it always does when you let it speak long enough. It outlasted them. I thought that would be the end of it. Cases close, people move on, life fills the space where chaos used to live. But power has a way of echoing. 3 months after the settlement, my name started appearing in places I hadn't put it. Invitations to panels, quiet calls from firms asking for off-the-record guidance, nonprofits wanting help structuring safeguards for seniors, judges asking if I'd be willing to consult on policy drafts. Not fame. Influence. The kind that grows when people realize you don't flinch under pressure. One afternoon, I was reviewing a draft compliance framework when an unfamiliar number lit up my phone. Blocked ID. I let it ring. Then it rang again. On the third call, I answered. "Marissa," a man said carefully, "this is Thomas Keller." The name landed heavy. Greenwell Mutual's former legal counsel. "I don't believe we've met," I replied. "No," he said, "and I'm hoping we can keep it that way. I just wanted to say you did more damage than you realize." I waited. "Not to us," he continued quickly, "to a lot of people who thought they were untouchable." There it was. Not an apology. A warning. "You should be careful," he added. "People do like when the system learns their names." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Then they should have behaved better. I hung up and saved the number. That night, I opened the black folder for the first time since the trial. Not to relive it. To prepare. Because once you expose one rot, others start surfacing. Emails trickled in from former bank employees, anonymous tips, screenshots, patterns, different institutions. Same tricks, same justifications. I wasn't chasing them. They were finding me. By fall, I was asked to testify again. This time not about grandma, about structure, about how fraud survives inside respectable systems, about how blame is strategically assigned to the most convenient person in the room. I didn't mention my family. I didn't have to. After the hearing, a woman approached me in the hallway. Late 40s, expensive coat, careful smile. "You don't remember me," she said, "but I remember you, Thanksgiving, Fairview. Lisa's friend. I wanted to tell you," she continued, lowering her voice. "They still say you went too far." I met her eyes. People who benefit from silence always think truth is excessive. She had nothing to say to that. Around the same time, Dad sent an email. Short, careful, almost professional. "We miss you. Your mother is well. Maybe we could talk." I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. Some conversations don't heal. They just reopen old negotiations you already lost once. Winter returned. On the anniversary of Thanksgiving, I baked a pecan pie. Same recipe. Same crust. Same splash of bourbon. I didn't take it anywhere. I ate a slice alone, standing in my kitchen, and realized something unexpected. I wasn't sad. The memory no longer had teeth. That's when the final call came. A federal task force. Multi-state. Elder financial exploitation. They wanted me. Not as a witness. As lead advisor. I looked at the offer letter. Then at the city outside my window. Then at the drawer where the folder rested, quiet and complete. Family had tried to erase me. Instead, they'd sharpened me. And this time, what I was walking into wasn't a kitchen accusation. It was a room where decisions get made. And I was done asking for a seat. The room didn't look like power. No marble floors, no dramatic flags, just long tables, muted lights, and people who spoke softly because they didn't need to raise their voices to be heard. That's where real authority lives. I took the seat they offered me, not at the edge, not as an observer, but at the center line where questions get directed and decisions stick. The task force moved fast. Multi-state patterns. Shared vendors. Consultants hopping institutions before audits closed in. The same mechanics David had used, just scaled. Different names, same arrogance. I didn't testify this time. I built frameworks. Designed detection models. Wrote the language that would become policy. When banks pushed back, citing cost, I slid charts across the table that showed restitution payouts dwarfing prevention budgets. When executives argued, bad actors, I showed them internal emails proving incentive structures rewarded silence. No shouting. No threats. Just facts arranged, so denial had nowhere left to stand. One afternoon, a junior analyst pulled me aside. "You know," she said carefully, "your case gets referenced a lot, internally." I nodded. "It's simple." She waited. People don't expect the person they exile to come back with jurisdiction. By spring, indictments rolled out quietly. Not headlines, not spectacle, just sealed filings and calendar dates that rearranged careers. A compliance director resigned. A regional VP retired early. 2 consulting firms dissolved overnight. And then, inevitably, my phone rang. "Dad." I watched it buzz itself into silence. Later that evening, Mom emailed. Longer this time. Less guarded. More fear than pride. "We didn't know how serious it was. Your father is struggling. He keeps saying he should have listened." I typed a response. Deleted it. Typed again. Then closed the laptop. Regret doesn't entitle anyone to access. Grandma never asked me to reconcile. She understood something the others didn't. Trust isn't restored by proximity. It's restored by accountability. We had dinner once a week, nothing fancy. Soup, bread, conversation that stayed in the present. Sometimes she'd look at me like she wanted to say more, then think better of it. That restraint was its own apology. On the 1-year anniversary of the investigation, the task force released its final report. My name sat on the first page, not highlighted, just there, embedded. The way lasting things usually are. A reporter asked me afterward, Do you feel vindicated? I thought about the pie, the doorway, the silence. No, I said, I feel finished. That night, I opened the drawer. I took out the black folder. And for the first time, I didn't see betrayal inside it. I saw a timeline, a turning point, proof that being doubted doesn't end you unless you let it. I placed the folder in a box with old notebooks and files I no longer needed. Not because it didn't matter, but because it had already done its job. Somewhere in Fairview, the house still stood. Same windows, same porch light, different reality. I didn't need to return. I had built something stronger than acceptance. I had built authority, and there was nothing left for them to take. Authority changes how people remember you. Not all at once. Not publicly. Quietly. Doors that once stayed closed start opening without explanation. Names that used to speak over you start pausing when you enter a room, not out of fear, out of calculation. That's when I knew this chapter still had one final turn left. It came in the form of a certified letter. Not from my family, not from the bank, from the State Bar Association. David had filed a complaint, alleging conflict of interest, personal vendetta, and professional misconduct. He claimed I had used my position to target him, that I'd weaponized the system out of revenge. It was almost impressive. Almost. I read the letter once, then again, and smiled. Because this was the last move people like David always make when they realize they've lost control. They don't defend their actions, they attack your credibility. The bar scheduled a review hearing. Closed door. Panel of 5. No jury. No drama. Just evidence. I walked in alone. No attorney, no entourage, just a slim binder and my name on the agenda. David was already there. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, structurally, like someone whose scaffolding had been removed. He didn't look at me. The chair opened the session. Ms. Ellery, do you understand the nature of the complaint? Yes, I said calmly. And your response? I brought documentation. That's all. I didn't argue motive. Didn't mention Thanksgiving. Didn't say family. I laid out timelines. Federal requests. Signed cooperation agreements. Independent review triggers. I showed how my involvement began after formal invitation. How every action had oversight. How the findings predated my participation. Then I stopped talking. David's attorney tried to frame it as emotional retaliation. The chair interrupted him. Counsel, she said, this panel reviews conduct, not feelings. I watched the color drain from David's face. They dismissed him from the room first. When the door closed, one panelist leaned forward. You know, she said, most people in your position would have stepped back to avoid scrutiny. I couldn't, I replied. Silence was how it happened the first time. They nodded. The decision came back in under an hour. Complaint dismissed. Record sealed. Referral noted. As I left the building, David was waiting outside. He looked up at me then. You didn't have to destroy everything, he said hoarsely. I stopped. Turned. I didn't destroy anything, I said evenly. I documented it. That distinction matters. It always does. I walked away. No victory speech. No final word. Some endings don't need emphasis. Weeks later, the task force offered me a permanent role. Not advisory, structural, policy authority. A seat where rules are written, not interpreted. I accepted. On my first day, I cleaned out my home office. Old case files. Outdated manuals. And at the bottom of the drawer, the black folder. I opened it one last time. Not to remember. To verify. Everything was still there. Clean. Undeniable. I closed it, slid it into the shred bin, and watched the machine pull it apart piece by piece. Not erasing the truth, just releasing it. Because justice doesn't require souvenirs, and power doesn't require witnesses. What mattered was this. I walked into my family's home, once carrying a pie. I walked out carrying doubt they never bothered to question. And I returned to the world, carrying something far heavier. Authority earned the hard way. And this time, no one could take it from me. The final hearing wasn't dramatic. No cameras. No raised voices. No last-minute confessions. Just a long oak table, sealed files, and people who finally understood the weight of what had been done. David sat on one side, shoulders stiff, suit too neat for a man who'd already lost. Lisa wasn't there. She signed a cooperation agreement months earlier, testified, traded silence for leniency. Family loyalty has limits when prison enters the room. I sat across from them, not as a witness this time, not as a victim, but as an appointed expert advisor to the court. Neutral, authorized, unmovable. The judge flipped through the files slowly. "Mr. Ellery," he said to my father, who had been called as a character reference, "do you stand by your earlier statements accusing your daughter of theft?" Dad didn't answer immediately. I watched his hands. They were shaking. "No," he said finally, "I was wrong." The words didn't feel like victory. They felt like gravity. The judge nodded once and turned to David. "You abused trust," he said calmly. "Not just financial trust, familial trust. You leveraged proximity and scapegoated competence. That's not desperation, that's intent." David opened his mouth. Closed it. Sentencing was procedural after that. Restitution orders, professional bans, permanent flags that would follow him longer than any prison term ever could. When it was over, the room emptied quietly. Dad stood near the door, unsure. "Marissa," he said, voice breaking, "I should have listened." I looked at him. "I didn't need belief," I replied. "I needed fairness, you chose neither." There was nothing else to say. Outside, the air felt lighter, not relieved, clear. Grandma waited for me on a bench near the courthouse steps. She stood slowly when she saw me. "It's done?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in foil. Pecan pie. Homemade. Slightly crooked. Still warm. "I used your notes," she said softly. "The ones you wrote years ago." I took it. That was forgiveness. Not spoken. Offered. We sat together for a while, watching people pass, lives intersecting briefly before moving on. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. They end with alignment. I didn't go back to Fairview. Didn't reclaim a room. Didn't restore traditions. I built something stronger than belonging. I built a life where truth didn't need permission. Years from now, they'll forget the accusation. They'll forget the money. They'll forget the drama. But they'll remember this. That when they tried to erase me, I documented them instead. And the record chose me. If this story moved you, hit like. If you believe truth deserves patience, subscribe. And if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, share this with someone who needs to hear it.